Welcome and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Ashley Dom and I am the Chief Development Officer and Head of Advancement here at Bread for the City. We have called this town hall today to present our strategic plan for 2022 to 2027. And we're having just a little technical difficulty with the video, but hopefully everybody is able to see this slide deck that's up on the screen. Our strategic plan is seeking to adapt our current operations, add bold new programs, and enhance Bread for the City's portfolio of services while we strengthen our advocacy work. This blueprint for the next 5 years will focus on the organization's efforts to respond to the ever-changing economic and social needs of the community. And we're envisioning a future where people not only have access to the services and support they need to thrive, but one where communities can reclaim their narratives. With this strategic plan, Bread for the City is closer to seeing its centers filled each day with community members who are experiencing healing and joy, expressing their creativity and imagination, achieving their dreams, finding liberation from racism and cycles of poverty. So we're going to take a look at the 5 strategic pillars that make up this plan. How do these pillars respond to the needs of the community? First, they were created not only with our community in mind, but by our community. We engaged a wide range of our client and patient community members to envision this future with us and help us better understand what challenges they're facing today that we can help them with. Board members and staff members also helped through the survey and interviews. It was a really complex and intentional process to get us to these 5 strategic pillars. What we found during this planning process, the focus groups, the interviews, the surveys, it was in line with what we see every day. Community members are facing critical challenges that compound cycles of poverty, informed by these voices, informed by everybody that helped us build this plan. Our strategic plan coordinates efforts between the upstream or advocacy and systems change efforts, midstream or economic security efforts, and downstream or direct service channels of our work to create opportunities for growth over each of those areas of work. And as you can see here, these pillars are 1, anti-racism and racial equity, which is promoting racial equity within and outside of Bread for the City. The second one, systems reform, deepening our commitment to advocacy, especially focused on housing and economic security campaigns. Number 3 is new client services, listening to what the needs are in our community and which can be met with new services. Number 4, improving client services, enhancing and tailoring our current client services to ensure that we're meeting people where they are today in our current environment. And number 5, our last one there, sustainability, building resources and capacity to reach each of these strategic goals. So these strategic pillars are also strategic investments. And Bread for the City plans to meet this increased personnel and programmatic costs over the strategic plan period. As important as raising funds is, keeping expenses in check and retaining staff aid in this strategy as well. And speaking of raising funds, we can see here the projected revenue. Bread for the City is focused on sustainably raising almost $30 million a year by 2027. And that's when we're talking about our annual operational revenue goals. And we're planning to do this by optimizing the funding streams that we have been loyally partnering with us over the last 50 years and identifying areas of growth. Bread for the City receives funding from individuals, foundations, local government, federal government, corporations, and other organizations across Washington, D.C. and our greater region. And when you donate to Bread for the City, you're enabling us to do everything we've discussed today. None of this work is possible. Oh, sorry, we're having a video update. There we go. Video's back up and running. Thank you so much, team. What I was saying is that when you donate to Bread for the City, you really help us with this work. We cannot do this work without donor support. Every dollar that goes towards that $30 million by the end of 2027, that comes from our donors. So everything we're achieving together. And we're going to talk a little bit about the future and what this plan has in mind. On Friday, we're going to talk about the past to talk about the future, because on Friday, Bread for the City officially turns 50 years old. With all that history behind us, it can be challenging to envision our future. And that's why we depended on the client community to help us shape what they need from us. And that's why we're really grateful for every member of our staff teams, many of which are celebrating milestone moments of 10, 15, even 30 years at Bread for the City. And we know that our insistence that poverty is a societal choice that can be eradicated in our lifetimes seems idealistic, but being on the front lines every day for 50 years and working on systems change behind the scenes, we know it's possible, and that's what we baked into this strategic plan. I want to thank everyone for being here. I especially want to thank everybody who had a hand in building this future. We worked with a lot of folks to put together this strategic plan, and I'm just so incredibly thankful. We're going to hop over to the panel in just one moment. While we have our videos working, I wonder if Mahogany and Tashira would mind enabling their videos so we can say hi. We want to, yeah. So once again, I want to introduce Mahogany Thomas, who's our new Chief Program Officer, and Tashira Monroe, who's our new Chief Operating Officer. Thank you so much for hopping in and being here with us, letting us listen to your lovely voices in our initial podcast version of this town hall, and for coming off video and just saying hi to everybody. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to invite our panel to come on virtually over here with me. I'll give you a second to get ready. Thank you. Hello, hi everybody. It's so nice to see all of your faces. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists for the day. Joining us today is Noel Rush. He's a board member here at Bread for the City and our strategic planning chair. Courtney Dow is a board member as well and a client leader. She's a member of the Strategic Planning Committee. And Dr. Chicarlo Leek is the Deputy Director of the Mayor's Office on Racial Equity. Thank you all so much for joining us virtually, for working through all of our technology. We appreciate each of you for being a member of the panel today. Right before we jump in and go through some questions that I have for you all today, I want to remind everybody that for the sake of a well-rounded discussion, you can drop questions in the chat for us to discuss towards the end of the town hall. So as you're listening to this conversation, or if you have any questions about the strategic plan, please drop those right in the chat. All right, are we ready to get started? Awesome. Noel, I'm going to jump right over to you. As the strategic planning chair, you put so much work and effort into this strategic plan. We're so grateful, and I'm so happy that you can be here with us today. What would you say the role of staff and board members and community members were in championing and executing the strategic plan? Kind of why did we bring everyone together for the planning process?
I think it goes without saying that it's really critical to get all the different stakeholders involved when you're developing a strategic plan. I've actually had the opportunity and the good fortune to work with Brad on, I think, 5 strategic plans now. It goes back about 20 years. And I think as you watch just strategic planning in general evolve over that 20-year period, but certainly that's true here at Bread, is that we've become to realize it gets more and more important to continue to involve the board, continue to involve the staff, but to really increase the involvement of the clients. And I think that is what would mark this strategic plan as being an evolution and a positive evolution and a change from some of the past strategic plans we've done. I've seen that grow a little bit every year, and now it actually the client input was probably the major part to developing our key pillars and in developing the plan.
Thank you so much. I think that's such a good segue over to Courtney. If you have anything to add to the idea of involving and centering community members, but in addition to that, I'm really curious what you think about the direction that we're going in the future and how you think the strategic plan will help us achieve that vision for the future.
Thanks, Ashley, for all your work. I think the direction we're going it's inspiring to me on a personal level. I know to a lot of people, and I think largely because what I'm seeing is, this emphasis on justice more and more, and I think that is really crucial to making sure that we're not just kind of staying in the same old path and staying in a rut. Being in an organization that's been around for a long time, I think it's easy to get stuck in a kind of pattern and not take the time to step back and reevaluate. And I think, having a strategic plan in place helps, I think, to maintain a level of accountability to be able to say, okay, this is what we said we're going to do. Are we actually doing it? And by making it public, by putting it out to the larger community, even with events like this, we can say, look, you can all see it. Everybody can see what we're supposed to be doing. So if we're not doing it, and especially if it's not clear, then please let us know and hold us accountable so we can remedy that.
And as one of our client leaders, why did you think it was important for us, to Noel's point, to increasingly go back to our client community and really have them engaged in this process more so than ever before in our history?
I'm going to step outside. I'm on my lunch break right now. So
we
just wanted
love
to be a
joining you
little
for
more
lunch.
quiet.
We love
Thank
being able to
you.
have a lunch meeting together.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously to me, and I know I think everybody at Breakfast, the clients are really the heart of what Bread for the City does. It's the heart of the organization. And if we're not following the clients, then I think we're not on the right path. To put it the most simply, if we're not following the clients, who are we following?
Really good point.
And there are a lot of different influences out here. We could be following a lot of different things, especially in DC, a lot of different agendas, things like this. I mean, I'm always trying to think about, okay, how can I just keep it real, in these environments and not be intimidated because, I haven't always been in these levels of meetings or this level of conversation. And so a lot of what I think about in these meetings is how can we translate what we're doing, better and better and better to make it so it's like everyday speak, everyday talk, the way that people talk about things when they're sitting at the bus stop, because Bread for the City has to be able to talk to the highest levels of government and the city and everything, and then also be able to really keep touch with the people. And so I think that by having the clients at the center, I think we're able to help keep our culture accessible as an organization and not become so kind of academic or high-minded or something that we forget who we are and why we're here.
We don't want to get out of touch.
Exactly. And I think the clients, better than anybody else, can help make sure that Bread for the City stays in touch with the city.
And speaking of the partnership that we have with government, local, federal, Dr. Leek, thank you so much for being with us today. I want to kick it over to you. I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about your office and what you are all doing to better people's lives, what your current plans are, and how that might be connected to the current landscape that we share in DC in terms of opportunities for wealth growth with our kind of client community, overcoming poverty. These are areas where I really think we have a fair amount of overlap.
Thank you, Ashley, for inviting our office to participate in this conversation today. We are very excited to be here. First, I want to start out by talking about how we think about kind of socioeconomic differences, in which it's inherent to think about socioeconomic differences. We can't talk about them without talking about race, largely because when we account for socioeconomic differences, many times we see that they still exist and persist if we don't account for race. And so race, socioeconomic differences do not always fully account for kind of the disparities that we see. So therefore, our office kind of leads with race, but takes an intersectional lens and looks at kind of how people are impacted by many different domains and dimensions of life or characteristics. In DC, we do know the current landscape for our residents and communities presents kind of both some challenges, but also some opportunities. And so I'm happy to talk about kind of our inaugural Racial Equity Action Plan, which we recently launched last month. And the plan includes 4 overarching goals, which really center and focus the district government on really understanding what racial equity means for both the staff and for themselves and in the work. And actually, how do we apply racial equity tools and resources to the work to bring about meaningful change in our policies and practices? And then lastly, how we're improving population level outcomes. So how are we changing community outcomes and decreasing disparities or disproportions that we see? One of the goals of that plan is goal area number 2, which I'll talk a little bit about. That goal focuses on reducing racial and ethnic inequities that we see in the district. And it includes 43 indicators across 7 dimensions of life. And within that kind of 7 dimensions or 7 areas, one of those being economic opportunity. And so that includes indicators such as that includes things such as home ownership, poverty rates, unemployment rates, labor market participation, so the percent of residents who can work or either have or are looking for jobs, as well as childcare costs. And so those are just examples of some of the indicators that are included in that area, but we're tracking those over the course of the next 3 years to see how we're bringing about meaningful change. So as I said, we launched the plan last month. The plan is set for a 3-year duration and updated every year. As we know, racial equity is such a large kind of thing where we might not achieve all these goals within 3 years, but we will work to make meaningful change over the next 3 years, and we'll be updating the plan annually, as I said. And in addition, it's important to talk about our mission. Our mission is to provide leadership and guidance and technical assistance to district agencies. One way we achieve that mission is our participation in the budget process. And so I just want to highlight one of the initiatives that agencies proposed previous years as well as this year that we supported. And so in the FY24 budget process, we supported funding for the Strong Family, Strong Futures, which provided an expansion of $1 million to that program. And as many of you may know, that program invests in children and families in low income in wards 5, 7, and 8. So that's just one example of how we participate to in the budget process and to bring about meaningful change and operationalize racial equity across the district.
Thank you so much for sharing more about the plan. I think it's always so great to see our government partners kind of have these plans of action. Do you know where that's located if people want to go see it? Is it in development? Is it published? Where is it in the kind of pipeline of planning, if you will?
It is published. We are so happy that it is out there for everyone to digest, to understand, and keep us accountable to the work. So I am dropping it in the chat. The plan was co-created with community members' input. So we hosted a series of community listening sessions and focus groups and interviews over the course of a year and a half to really make sure that we're centering things that are most important to residents in the plan. And so we're really excited to launch the plan, and I'll drop it in the chat right now. So
and we can make sure that we send it in our follow-up materials as well.
There you go.
I know that the office is relatively young. It was created, is it 3 years ago?
Yes, February of 2021. So we just hit our 3-year mark.
So seeing that you came online kind of in the midst of maybe the heaviest part of the COVID-19 pandemic, or at least at the very kind of high end of the impacts that we were seeing economically here in DC, do you feel like the pandemic and the inflation rates and the economic impact of the pandemic exacerbated the wealth gap? Are you seeing that? Are you seeing indicators that are telling you that those wealth gaps here in DC have racial are split on racial lines?
I would say that I think we've seen across the nation that kind of the pandemic and inflation rates definitely had an impact in the racial wealth gap that we see in the district and across the country. And these challenges are disproportionately affecting vulnerable communities. And so this is definitely looking at kind of those economic disparities that we see being amongst Black and Brown residents in DC, as well as our, so we recognize that as a truth there. And we are working to, help shape policies and practices that address those challenges there. I also want to create and think about what the pandemic also did for kind of racial equity. I think it was a moment of reckoning for us to stop as a country and take note of disparities in a way that we had not done so in the past. And it led to the creation of our office, right? And so we were founded, as you said, in 2021. The council passed the REACH Act in December of 2020. And so those incidents in the pandemic and the kind of racial and unjust kind of led to the formation of racial equity offices, but also for us as a government to think about the work and how we operationalize the work across government differently. So it's important to think about that. Two groundbreaking or kind of new initiatives that I think the government as a whole kind of proposed over the past, either during the pandemic or shortly after that, to really address some of these disproportions or disparities that we saw in socioeconomic status, one being Career Map, which was launched by DHS in 2022. And the program was designed to remove barriers from families that are confronted with economic challenges. And so as they as families pursue additional employment opportunities, they're able to sustain their families on the current benefits they receive. And it was a 5-year pilot that was launched in 2022. So it'll end in 2027. But as I said, it provides resources directly to families who have experienced homelessness and who are committed to pursuing a career, but may be at risk for losing kind of cash assistance, any food assistance, or kind of healthcare costs. And so allows them to kind of continue to receive those benefits as they earn a living wage. And so that is kind of one example of how we've worked to kind of close some of those race wealth gaps there. And then a newer program would be kind of our HBCU program that we launched this past year. So that recently was just launched, I believe, in January of this year. It's the HBCU Public Service Program. And so the program is in partnership with Howard University, DC government, and then University of District of Columbia. And it was designed to recruit 25 graduating seniors from those universities and then give them a year-long apprenticeship with district government. And so this will immerse them and give them experience working in the public sector. It gives them a full-time living wage, also give them on-the-job training and mentorship and professional development. So those are just kind of two examples, I think, of how the government has thought strategically, but also creatively to kind of bring about change in those disparities that we see.
Thank you so much. And thanks for mentioning the social safety net at Bread for the City. We definitely have our eye on that. And it's definitely one of the areas that we're always, checking in with our government partners on. So I really appreciate you speaking a little bit about that. Noel, I'm going to kick it back over to you. I really appreciate you speaking earlier about why we're centering our clients and the history of Bread for the City's strategic plans over the last 5 that you've worked on. With this plan in particular, we have 5 strategic investment areas, these 5 pillars, and they seem to span so much of Bread for the City's work. We're looking at client services, we're looking at our advocacy work, we're looking at our, sustainability and what we're doing with staff retention. How is the strategic planning committee managing what seems like such a broad swath of our mission over the next few years?
With a lot of difficulty. I think the real challenge here is that Bread and maybe some of the programs that the district is starting to put into place and everything is really on the leading edge of a lot of this stuff. And it's difficult to know what the future is in that instance. There's a big target out there for us to try to move towards and hit, but specific investments that you need to make to get there are not well defined for you in some of these areas, but particularly anti-racism and systems reform. And so we're constantly testing what we do, what looks like it's really working, what doesn't. Do we have enough money to fund everything we want to do? All those types of things. And I would hope as we move forward that this plan is not static. It can't sit in place like it is. It was great when we put it in place a year ago. I would think 2 years from now, there's going to be changes in it, maybe even major changes in some areas. I think some things we will have reinforced that are really working, and other things that we didn't even think of or dream of need to be done, and we need to start addressing. So I think the role of the Strategic Planning Committee is, on behalf of the boards, is to do the deep dive in those areas and try to flush them out. And I should add that the Strategic Planning Committee is made up of board members and staff and clients, and it's a really great mix of people. So we have a lot of viewpoints on the committee itself, and then in turn, we really rely on the staff a lot, who has to implement the plan. The board doesn't implement the plan. The committee doesn't implement the plan. But so we're constantly looking for feedback from the staff and from the community, what's working, what's not, what's a new, I mean, like the pandemic you were just pointing out,
Mhm.
highlighted some of the gaps that were in the inequities that were in place that were probably greater than anybody dreamed. We all could have said, yeah, there's inequities there, but it crystallized how big those inequities were, and that it was likely they were even getting bigger during the pandemic time. So, it flushes out new things to do, new things to try. And I may have gone off on a tangent here on whatever your original question was, but
No, that's exactly right. It's, how do you keep a plan flexible and responsive and not just say, we wrote all these beautiful things down, we're going to put it in a desk for 5 years, and then we're going to evaluate it when we're done. And I think the point about the pandemic and the point about planning is so telling, because how many of us in 2019 were writing strategic plans to prepare for a global, once in a generation pandemic? We were really hit with that and planning as it came, but we were able then to analyze a bit afterwards to say, how could we have managed this better in the future, and where were those gaps? And now we can see where a lot of them are. Courtney, I want to turn it over to you. Based on what we've been talking about with the strategic plan, one of the questions that can come up, and I'm curious about your thoughts as one of our client leaders, is why does it matter for an organization like Bread for the City to engage in upstream's systems reform work? Noel was saying that the racial equity and the systems change work is some of the more nebulous work in the strategic plan, some of the more hard to define, work. Why would a direct service organization like Bread for the City engage in that and make that a strategic priority?
That's a great question, Ashley. I could say, in my own life, I've seen the impact of this because I grew up in foster care myself, right? And then in recent years, within the last 2 or 3 years, I started to become aware of, working groups within the Maryland government that was saying, oh, yeah, actually, we recognize that we had racist policies as a child welfare system. And now they are trying to do things to help address the fact that they were separating Black families at a much higher rate than white families, even though white families had more instances of active abuse. With Black families, they called it quote unquote neglect. And so the poverty was criminalized as neglect, and so many Black families were separated as a result of that, right? Can you all hear me okay? Okay. So when I started understanding the higher levels of this and how this had impacted my family, it was such a powerful moment for me, because there was so much blame and so much shame that I had been existing with for so many years, and that my family had been existing with for so many years, thinking we're messed up. We're just messed up. And if we were better people, or my mom was a better person, this would not have happened to our family, you know? And so I think for a lot of people, they internalize their circumstances, and that is directly related to that sense of self-worth and thinking, well, maybe I'm homeless because I'm a quote unquote bad person. Maybe I don't have enough money because, I'm somehow in the wrong. And I know for myself, when I see Bread for the City doing things to address things at the higher level, address racism, address so many different systemic issues, it helps me personally, and I think a lot of different people, a lot of different clients, to be able to say, you know what, this is not just about me. This is not just about what I'm doing or not doing. This is not necessarily about how I need to be different as a person. A lot of this is about the larger situation, right? And it doesn't mean that I'm totally, totally free of any personal accountability. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are so many different factors that can contribute to anyone's situation. So many factors that can contribute to poverty, that it's I think, very powerful for the clients to see and for the larger community to see Bread for the City calling out these factors and striving to minimize them so that we don't have so many of these stigmas attached to the people that are in need of services.
Thank you, Courtney. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I really appreciate you, sharing that insight. I think it really speaks to, at least from my perspective, why dignity and respect are such big aspects of Bread for the City's ethos and the way that we want to treat everybody coming in to our services. And we really want to do that narrative change work, exactly what you're talking about. And the narrative change work, especially around direct cash giving, is right there in our strategic plan, because we really want to take that stigma away and really spotlight just the dignity and the humanity of the folks who are receiving our services, and that it's not a morality question when you have to come in and use a food pantry. For a lot of reasons, it's a systems question more so than not. So I really do appreciate you sharing that with me. We're going to stick on this topic of advocacy. Dr. Leek, I'm curious why advocacy is important in building opportunities, building co-creation with the community, implementing institutional local policies and practices. With the government kind of go in that direction on its own, or is there a reason that we partner on the advocacy space? Is there kind of a reason that government wants to hear from experts like people who work at Bread for the City and people who have lived experience like our clients? Why is advocacy an important healthy struggle between the community and government? You might say it's not healthy, but I guess that's my question.
Oh, I'll talk about that. We definitely see community engagement as a central tenet of our work and of our office. But I did want to go back to something Noel said, just because I'm glad he lifted up the fact that your strategic plan, the Bread for Cities strategic plan, and I would say our racial equity action plan is basically a living document that will be updated for us annually. It sounds like you're looking at kind of how you'll change that document as well, and that it's a roadmap with actions. And so I just wanted to I love the way he lifted that up, because many times people see it as just kind of a document that's just kind of a piece of paper, but this is supposed to really lead to change. And so I just wanted to kind of echo those sentiments as well. But as I said, community engagement is a central tenet for our office and for the work. It plays a pivotal role in building opportunities of co-creation within the community, and implementing institutional and local policies. We approach the work and recognize there oftentimes is a lack of distrust or mistrust. And so it also helps with building that trust back with individuals and with communities. It also helps focus on kind of collaboration and creating this collective vision for the district and for the work. And it really does look at what are the systemic inequities that we need to address there in our work. And so we really see community engagement and efforts to build partnership within racially diverse communities as essential to moving the work along, and in creating inclusive and equitable communities and environments. Our definition, and this is important to kind of think through, is that our definition of racial equity for the district is a two-part definition that looks at both the process of it and also the outcomes. And most people are familiar with the outcome portion, where race no longer predicts outcomes, opportunities, and the distribution of resources. But it's also important to lift up the process part, because that's really where the community engagement piece really lies. And it's where, as a process, we see racial equity, or we apply a racial equity lens to the work when those who are most impacted by structural racial inequality are meaningfully involved in the creation and implementation of institutional policies and practices that impact their lives. And so that's really important to lift that up in that definition, because that really grounds how we are approaching the work, but also how we're educating and advocating for our sister agencies across the district to address the work and engage with community. And then lastly, I just want to talk about how we've been intentional over the past 2.5 years, or almost 3 years we've been around, to really intentionally engage with racial and social justice organizations in DC. So Bread for the City has been a partner of ours that we've engaged before, and we've especially engaged organizations that advocated for the passage of the REACH Act in 2020. And so really wanted to lift that up. In FY23, we hosted or participated in about 17 community engagement events. And so we really look forward to how we can engage with residents and continue to center their voices in the policies and practices that we create as a district.
Thank you. And I know you spoke previously about how the plan was influenced by or involved a fair amount of community engagement in the structuring of it. Are there more opportunities for people to provide feedback to the plan, or do you have more opportunities coming up that you'd like to share about ways that the community can get involved in helping with the plan or structuring it or providing feedback now that it's out and it's published?
So I don't have any specific dates yet, but I will definitely share those with you. I would like to kind of lift up the fact that we did host about 2 weeks ago a small kind of stakeholder engagement meeting with individuals who provided comments on our racial equity action plan, because we're now in the implementation phase of the plan, right? And so really wanted to get kind of input on and thoughts on the plan, and then any thoughts on kind of implementation. And so we're going to continue engaging with residents and community and organizations that are interested in providing kind of input on that implementation, but also lifting up any thoughts and ideas towards the next iteration of that. One of the other pieces that we're going to do is we're looking to launch a dashboard, which will have those indicators mapped on there. And so we're going to host focus groups as well for the dashboard development to make sure that the dashboard is user-friendly. So making sure that we can improve the readability and understandability, interpretation of the data that we present there. So there will be some forthcoming community engagement sessions as well for that. We launch a monthly newsletter. So if you want to stay abreast of activities and initiatives that are coming out of our office, if you go to ore.dc.gov, you can sign up for the newsletter. It is a monthly newsletter, comes out towards the end of each month. And then there you'll see whenever we are doing community engagement, we make sure we include it in that newsletter, but I will make sure that Bread for the City also receives that newsletter as well.
Thank you so much. Noel, I want to have kind of one final question over to you, where even though the strategic plan is looking towards the future, we're talking a lot about our 50th anniversary and the fact that we've been around for half a century. While the plan was being crafted, was there anything about our history that informed this vision for the future? Was there a connection between the two during all those months spent putting this plan together?
I would say definitely the all of our history has informed how we are today and how we're going forward. If you go back, when I first worked with Brett on a strategy, I think in 2003, um, it, I don't believe our vision has changed. I don't believe our mission has changed, although the wordings of them have evolved over time. Uh, but I also think our understanding of what is needed and necessary has evolved over time. And if you go back 20 years ago, mission was real clear that we had two roles: to alleviate suffering caused by poverty and to change the systems, reform the systems that allow that poverty to happen. I would suggest that at that point in time, probably 95% of our focus was on alleviating the suffering. And I think as you go through time, you see we added advocacy, we added community organizing, and it somewhere along the line, we began to understand and accept that one of the most important, maybe the most important underlying cause of structural racism and racism in general, or one of the causes of poverty was racism and structural problems there. And I think this plan clearly recognizes and brings forward our focus on anti-racism and structural reform and reforming the systems even more strongly than it ever has. And it doesn't mean we've backed off on trying to alleviate the suffering. Our programs have all continued to grow and adapt and change in time. And I won't go through each one, but I can vision how each one of them has evolved over time. And so I think it's the whole history. I can't go back 50 years, but I think our whole history is involved in how we got to today and how we're looking at the future.
Thank you so much. Well, we're just about at time. I have one final question for you all. It's really a question for all or any of our panelists. You know, when we think about the strategic plan, we're really thinking about the future. We're thinking about our place in the future here in DC. What's your own vision for the future of Washington, DC, of our city? Where do you see Bread for the City or other organizations like ours? What's our role in bringing about that future? What do you see for the future of this city?
Well, real quickly, and this is really a, a, a little bit of I don't know, uh, boy, that's obvious, Noel, kind of statement, but our vision of the future is where everybody living in the district, socially, economically, uh, whatever, has an equal opportunity to succeed. And I guess that's what I would say. I'm an old white guy. I've had very few impediments in my life on opportunities. Maybe being a professional athlete or a rock star were off the board, but pretty much everything's been open for me, and it's taken me a long time to really understand uh, that you really have to get impediments out of people's way to give them an opportunity to succeed. If they're willing to work hard and everything else, they ought to be able to succeed. And if the system or whatever is preventing that from happening, it needs to be corrected. And I guess that's the vision I would see, is that we've made great strides in correcting that.
No, I appreciate that. Dr. Leek, do you have thoughts on your vision for DC in
Well,
the
I'll
future?
echo everything that he said. I will say ditto to what Noel said. I also say our vision for the district is that we envision a DC where everyone can thrive with a sense of agency. So that kind of mirrors what he just said, but also where race no longer predicts outcomes, opportunities, and distribution of resources. So the way I see it is, if we are really doing our jobs really well, and you're doing your job really well, we won't need our office, right? We would, I mean, with job security, I don't want to knock myself out of a job, but, we wouldn't need an office of racial equity because everyone will be thriving and living really well. And so, into their full potential. So that's how I envision and see the work.
Thank you so much. Courtney, I know we're having some technical issues, so you bounced up to the top, but I think we can still hear you if you want to add anything in about your vision for the future here in DC and where Bread for the City can fit into that.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm gonna be real. Like, I feel like it's not easy for me to see the future of the city. Sometimes it's not even really that easy for me to see my own future. Like, I have come out of a background where I was living very day to day, living very moment to moment, chronic homelessness and some more stuff. So it's like, it's actually a new thing for me, really holding vision for the future and like learning how to do that and believing in that. So I think for me, that's part of why having something like strategic plan, being on the committee, thinking about, wow, this is how you actually, think about the future, have a plan for the future. I wouldn't presume to know what the future is going to bring. I really do hope that we learn how to recognize each other's humanity more, all of us, and that, we understand that a lot of the suffering that we see in the world, a lot of the hardship we see in the world, it's not just about those groups changing that are experiencing the hardship. Quite often it's about every single person, every single organization, looking within and really thinking deeply and humbly about, how we can all change for the better. So
Thank you so much for that. I think it really speaks to our dream at Bread for the City to allow people to dream, allow people to think about the future, allow people that space, enable that through the services that we provide that start with direct services and stabilization, go into economic security, and eventually get to that systems reform, really working with our community members on their needs and getting to that point where people can have that breathing room to say, what do I envision for my future, right? And so I think that's such a beautiful testament, and I really appreciate you saying that. We're getting so close to the end of time. I'm going to pull out just a couple questions from our audience, one of which is, I think, more of a question for me, which is, how can I get involved as a community member with Bread for the City? Bread for the City has an intake process. You can call us or you can stop in to either of our centers, one on 7th Street Northwest and one on Marion Barry Avenue in Southeast. And you can talk with our intake specialist at the front desk about any number of your needs. You would be able to talk about if you have a legal need, if you want to sign up for food, if there is a social service that we can provide, help connect you with resources. And if you just want to come down and be involved in our advocacy and community organizing, we have the Terrence Moore Community Organizing Institute, and that is specifically for our client community to learn grassroots organizing techniques, and then go back out into the community and organize for what you want to see from your city. And so that's the best way to get involved is just come on in, give us a call, and we can do that. Another question that we have from our audience, I think specifically around the strategic plan, and which might be a great question for you, Noel, is how do we measure progress and success? When we have these goals and we publish these goals, now how are we actually saying, okay, we're progressing towards them, we're getting to a successful place?
I think there's two parts to that answer. One is measuring results, obviously, and I think the other is measuring the process. And it's not too different from what you said earlier. That well, I'll just give you a quick example and not ramble on here. We just had a progress report for the boards earlier this week, actually, and we tried to get into the key goals that are in place today and how are we doing? How have we done? What have we accomplished? But even equally as important, are we making those investments and getting prepared for what needs to happen tomorrow by putting stuff in place today? Some things, particularly Ashley in your area, things take 2 or 3 years to mature and get to a point where they do what you need them to do. We have to be sure we're making those investments today. And we constantly look at that. And that's really one of the roles of the Strategic Planning Committee on behalf of the boards, to kind of monitor that stuff and keep them informed.
Thank you so much. I want to, again, thank Noel, Dr. Leek, Courtney. Thank you so much for being here with us and being our panel for today and really connecting what we're doing with the strategic plan back out into the world. From wherever you're sitting in the virtual space, if you can kind of give a hand to our panel and thank them, we're super, super appreciative. Moving on, I was told that when Tashira and Mahogany were able to come up and say hi, they weren't pinned. I've just learned what pinned means. So we asked them just if they wouldn't mind being pinned real quick. So again, we can welcome them. This is such a great opportunity to welcome Tashira and Mahogany, and being able to have this duo kind of take over operations and programs was actually one of the goals in our strategic plan. It's one of the early 2022 goals that we were able to accomplish in fiscal year 24. So we're so excited that they're here. They are literally the embodiment of success and progress on the strategic plan. So thank you for allowing us to pin you up here as well. So I'm going to move us over to farewells. Thank you all so much for being here today. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank everyone for attending, for your interest in learning more about Bread for the City, learning more about our vision for the future and your place in it. If you would want to visit breadforthecity.org/our strategic plan, you can access the full plan, you can learn more, and you can support this work by donating at breadforthecity.org. And you can always reach out to myself or our CEO, George Jones, for further questions and more information about how to get involved. Like I said, Friday marks 50 years of serving Washington, D.C. residents here at Bread for the City. I think it's so nice to end our look into the future with a look into the past and to say we're so excited to celebrate our 50th anniversary on the 15th. And we'll be sending out an email asking for our supporters to help us raise $50,000 in honor of that 50th birthday. So please, anything that you might be able to donate to get us to that goal, we really want to celebrate all together. And the best way that we think we can celebrate is to help feed someone, help provide legal access to somebody, bring somebody into our medical clinic and get them a checkup. And that's really the best way to say thank you to Bread for the City, is to continue to allow us to do our work. So finally, I want to say thank you again. I appreciate you all being with us through our technology. And I really appreciate everyone being with us as we are learning more together about the future of our city and also the future of Bread for the City. So thank you again so much for being here. I'm going to do the waving thing. Thanks everybody so much.